Hi, and welcome to my channel where I make dishes inspired by some of my favorite video game characters. Today's dish is inspired by 9S from Nier Automata. I know this is in no way a hot take, but Nier Automata is an absolute masterpiece to me, and it's definitely in my top 5 video games of all time. It was one of those games that shocked me with how masterful a video game could be in every way, and seriously strengthened my love for games as a medium. All of the characters are so expertly created, and I think 9S is a sure standout. You first meet him while playing as 2B, and he is so sweet and endearing. The way he talks with his operator is so kind, and his desire for companionship with 2B is so fun to watch. He is really the first obvious proof we need that androids really do have feelings, even though they're not supposed to. As we play through Route A, we have the immense desire to protect 9S, especially from Adam during the gripping copied city section. As we play through Route B, we get to see more of his personality traits through his thoughts and actions, and we get to appreciate his skill with hacking. As we go through the game in the final routes and endings and beyond, we go from adoring this sweet and kind android who couldn't hurt a fly, to watching him break in real time as 2B dies. We feel bad for him at first, as we also feel the loss of 2B so much, but then we keep playing as him and get this pit in our stomach as his story continues. We watch as 9S becomes absolutely driven by revenge and hate for A2, and we watch as his analytical and calm nature becomes irrational and unhinged. You start to see 9S turning into something completely different than you're used to, and of course, it's up to you at the end of the story to evaluate if you still want to stay by his side or if you feel like he is too far gone. This massive 180 in 9S's behavior and actions is a part of why the second half of the game is so incredibly gripping. And as I say with so many different games, if my memory was ever wiped, I would adore getting to play this game for the first time again. As an android, 9S doesn't need to eat, and so foods of choice, and honestly food in general, aren't really brought up much in Nier Automata. I can say though that if I had to guess whether 9S would be a bigger fan of sweet food or savory food, I think he'd pick sweets all the way. If he had a human stomach, I can imagine he would indulge himself on sweet treats all the time, whether they were chocolatey and rich or fruity and tangy. I love the idea that robots and androids would find themselves leaning towards fried foods since they require oil to make and synthetic life forms require oil to work. Because of this, I knew I wanted to make 9S some kind of fried dessert, and luckily there are plenty to choose from. 9S's light hair reminds me of creamy goodness, and I was reminded of one of my favorite dishes of all time, fried ice cream. It also reminded me of how 9S is always pondering the meaning of life in everyone's existence, and the idea of cold ice cream in scalding hot oil would perplex him so much. So I decided to make some deep-fried ice cream for 9S that has so much flavor packed inside, but is deceptively easy to make. If you've never had fried ice cream before, you're in for a treat, and it really is insanely easy to make. Here's what you'll need to make your own: frosted flakes or cornflakes, granulated sugar, ground cinnamon, ice cream of your choice, oil for frying, chocolate syrup, whipped cream, maraschino cherries, and any other toppings of choice. Also, one thing you can add to really elevate the experience is a fried flour tortilla to create an edible bowl underneath your ice cream, kind of like a waffle bowl. I totally forgot to buy them from the store until I finished making these, but I definitely recommend it. You need to make sure that you start the prep for this ice cream at least 8 hours before you're ready to dig in. To get everything going, you'll crush about 1.5 cups of frosted flakes or cornflakes. You can of course pulse in a food processor or simply toss in a large Ziploc bag and crush with a rolling pin. Luckily, I got to use my really pretty rolling pin that has a bit of 9S's monochromatic color scheme. You'll want to crush the cornflakes so they're in smaller pieces, but you don't want them to be too fine, like powder. Once the cornflakes are smaller, pour them into a shallow bowl or plate. To this bowl of cornflakes, you'll also add in a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar and a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Now, if you don't want your ice cream to be too sweet and your cornflakes are coated in sugar already, you can definitely reduce the added granulated sugar here. Once all 3 ingredients are in the bowl, mix them together until they're evenly distributed. You'll then grab a small baking sheet or plate and line it with parchment paper. Then grab your ice cream of choice out of the freezer. I was pretty torn between cookies and cream and chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream for 9S, but luckily I found a mix of the two at the store. Thanks, Bluebell. That was my choice for 9S, but my husband was pretty adamant that 9S would prefer strawberry. What flavor do you think would be 9S's favorite? Just vanilla? Mint? Rocky Road? Anyways, as you've seen me do as I blabbered on, you'll scoop out 5 large and generous scoops of ice cream. As you create each scoop, roll them into the cereal mixture until all surfaces are well coated, then place onto your prepared baking sheet or plate. This amount of cereal mixture works pretty well for 5 large scoops, but you can obviously adjust if you want more or less. You can always prepare plenty and save until you're ready to prepare them on a later date. Once all ice cream scoops are coated, you'll transfer the sheet into your freezer to freeze up for at least 8 hours. 9S, can you watch the ice cream for us as it freezes? Yeah. Now, it's very important that you do not skip or reduce this freezing step for 8 hours. If you skip or reduce the time, when we actually go to fry the ice cream, it won't be hard enough and it'll melt too much. Anyways, you'll freeze the ice cream for at least 8 hours, so feel free to enjoy the rest of your morning and afternoon or get a good night's sleep. Once the ice cream is sufficiently chilled and you're ready to enjoy, start preparing your frying station. Fill a deep fryer or a large pot with oil, and then start heating the oil until it reaches 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the oil has finally come to temperature, 1 scoop at a time, pull your ice cream from the freezer and drop it into the fryer. You'll fry for no more than 10 seconds to crisp up the outside coating without completely melting the inside. I feel like the sweet spot for time is frying for around 7 seconds, but you can adjust based on your own preferences. Once the ice cream has taken a very brief oil bath, you'll use a slotted spoon to remove the scoop from the fryer. Allow some of the excess oil to drip off, then transfer immediately to a serving bowl or plate. Top the ice cream with toppings of your choice, such as chocolate syrup, whipped cream, and a cherry on top. Then you're all ready to serve and enjoy. I always forget how easily this insanely decadent dessert comes together. The outside golden fried coating of the ice cream is seriously to die for and has this amazing crunch yet chew to it. The hint of cinnamon adds some extra depth, and the coating is heavenly as it mixes with the milky and creamy ice cream. The ice cream itself has such a wonderful texture as it's lightly melted on the outside, yet hard and firm on the inside. The whipped cream and chocolate syrup mixes with everything and takes it to a whole other flavorful level. If someone stole your bowl from you, you'd have a hard time not going into a psychotic rage and irrational desire for revenge, just like 9S. Maybe in another world or life, 9S would be walking down the hall of a bustling mall with 2B at his side, and they'd smell an amazing aroma wafting towards them. They'd finally see the culprit, a fried ice cream stand with this amazing smell of sweet fried goodness. 9S would probably tilt his head with confusion, like a little dog, and wonder how 2 very different things could possibly go together. "I'm not sure," 2B would answer, and they'd keep walking, but she'd notice how 9S kept glancing back at the stall. After passing a few stores, with 9S still longingly looking at the stall, he'd finally come upon a store with really cute t-shirts. He'd start walking in to buy a shirt for 2B, and 2B would say, "You can go in yourself. I'm not interested." "Suit yourself," 9S would shrug, and he'd have a blast picking out so many amazing outfits for 2B. He'd go a little crazy, but couldn't help himself as she would look so cute in everything. After checking out at the register, he'd grab his bags and head out of the store to find 2B standing with her hands behind her back. "I've got something for you," he'd say, and hand the bag to her. But to his surprise, she would unveil a surprise for him that she was hiding. He'd see an absolutely delicious bowl of fried ice cream in her hands. "Just for you, Nines," she'd say with the faintest of smiles. The recipe card is in the video description if you'd like a more quick and concise version to give it a try. Like if you want a bite, subscribe for more geeky treats, and comment what foods 9S reminds you of. Thanks for following along.